Hello, this is Minder Chen. I'm Professor of Management Information Systems at Martin V. Smith School of Business and Economics, California State University, Channel Island. This is part of the Entrepreneurship video series. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about design thinking. This is the part 2 of our design thinking tutorial. Design thinking sometimes is referred to as a human-centered design approach. It focuses on 3 forces. One is people. We're focusing on the desirability of people in terms of their requirement and needs or their emotions in terms of interacting with the product or service that we try to offer. The second is the technology force. And we want to make sure that whatever technology we would use, it is feasible for us from the technical viewpoint to develop the product and service where the technology is embedded. Third is the business aspect. We want to make sure that the product or service, which eventually will be part of a business, is viable from a financial viewpoint, that at the end of the day, we can make enough money to support the development of the product, the marketing of the product, and the business that build the product. Design thinking is a methodology, but there's a set of guiding principles, which is really a mindset that guide us in applying the design thinking methodology. Let's go over some of this principle. One is focus on human value. This is why we call it human-centered design. And the empathy, we need to apply empathy for the people that will be using our product and services and make sure we're addressing their fundamentals needs. Second is show, don't tell. When you try to communicate your visions to the potential user or stakeholders, and try to use the prototype, some illustrative visuals to help you to tell a good story. And third is craft clarity. You want to create a coherent visions of sometimes a very messy problem. You try to frame the problem properly, that you inspire people to work on the problem and solving the problem. The fourth principle is embraced experimentation, which means that take action, conduct experiment, build prototype, initiate a pilot study, and to not simply just validate your idea, but it's really an integral part of the innovation process. So we build to think and learn. And so building and taking action, embrace experimentation is one of the important principles. Another principle is be mindful of the process. And later we'll discuss the design thinking process, which is part of design thinking methodology. So you want to be aware of at which stage of the design thinking process you're in, and what method or techniques that's available to you, and what are the goals that you try to reach in that particular stage. Another principle is bias towards action. This is similar to this embrace experimentation, because when you experiment, you take actions. And so design thinking, to some extent, it's more about doing than thinking. And so we have a bias towards just get started, just do it. And certainly in the process, we need to think through what need to be done, or what's the outcome means, and how we should revise our action plan. The last principle is called radical collaborations. You're encouraged to bring people with different background from different discipline, such that you have a very diversified groups of team working together to solve a complex problem, which really require people from different disciplines to contribute and bring their technical expertise and life experience to the table. In Tom Kelly and David Kelly's book called Creative Confidence, they encourage people to kind of look at a situation with a fresh eye. Sometimes it's called beginner's mind. And so you need to think like a traveler, which always bring the so-called beginner's mind to the table. They're always curious about what have they seen, because it's most likely like the first time. In design thinking, we encourage to do so by looking at some familiar things, just like a traveler seeing it for the first time, which sometimes will give you the insight. And you need to work closely with your end users and observe them in the field, study how they use or interacting with existing product or consume a service. We need to learn how to asking the right question, asking why, or keep asking why. We will frame or reframe the challenge so we have a fresh perspective on how things work. Eventually, we need to build, through collaboration, a creative support network to help us to tackle a wicked problem. So travel broadens our mind, and the beginner's mind is really try to observe the world with fresh eye. And we will look at frictions or friction point. That's where opportunity lies. When people are frustrated about something, that's where we may come up with some idea to alleviate their frustration, and that will lead us to a great innovation. So with that fresh eye, we will rediscover something that we seems to be familiar with, but found something that profound. We need to pay a lot of attention to details and to help us to understand what's going on, and look for inspiration. I always believe that look at the customer friction, the customer's frustration when they try to use a product or try to enjoy a service experience. If they got frustrated, that's where an opportunity may lie. So that friction is often an unmet needs, and in a particular situation from a target customer segment. So friction, sometimes we use the term pains, needs, wants, unmet needs, or inelastic demand, which means that no matter what people want something to be fixed, want something to be better. How can we be more creative in engaging in design thinking? This is from a psychologist, Robert Sternberg, who studied creativity. One is reframing, redefine the problem. A problem well defined is half solved, as we always say. And be willing to take risk. But we're taking sensible risks and willing to accept failure as part of the innovation process. We will confront obstacle head on and be willing to challenge the status quo. We're willing to tolerate ambiguity because under high uncertainty as a startup initiative, there's a lot of ambiguity. So we need to be able to tolerate ambiguity when we're not certain whether we are on the right path. And through exploration, eventually we would find the right path towards success. And in the process, we need to learn continuously and to gain insight, to understand the business domain, and to acquire new skill, either ourselves or by collaborating with a partner. So let's formally introduce the design thinking process, which is part of this methodology. And process is very important in any methodology in innovation, and design thinking methodology is no exception. Remember, one of the guiding principle in design thinking is be mindful of the process. Here is Stanford Design School's and IDEO's methodology for design thinking. It has 5 stages. The first one is empathize. Second is define, ideate, prototype. We use it as a verb, and then test. And you can visit the following document to understand the methodology better. And to create meaningful innovation, you need to know your users and emphasize and care about their lives. Define means framing the right problem. By doing so, that's the only way to create the right solution. Ideate, it's not about coming up with the right idea. It's about generating the broadest range of possibility. So we started with so-called convergent thinking, using techniques such as brainstorming. And we build prototype. Prototype help us to think. So it's built to think. And then we test the prototype to learn about how user interact with the prototype, their reaction and feedback. And that's testing. Testing is an opportunity to learn about your solution assumption and certainly your user in terms of the usage and their behaviors when they interact with the prototype that we have developed. And this is an iterative process. In another literature, IDEO used only a 3-stage process, which is inspiration, ideation, and implementation. Roughly empathize and define cover the inspiration stage. Ideate is the ideation stage. Implementation involves prototyping and testing. To some extent, empathize, we need to understand who are we solving the problem for. And define what is the problem and what are our users' needs. And ideate and also the following prototyping and testing is try to figure out how we can solve the problem and address the user's particular needs. And once you have gone through the whole process, then you need to figure out whether what we have developed works for our users, and why they work and why it doesn't. And through storytelling, we can inspire more people to get involved. Another document tried to explain this 5 stages slightly differently. Empathize is to develop a deep understanding of the challenge. Define stage is to clearly articulate the problem that we want to solve. Ideate is to brainstorm potential solutions, select and develop our solution based on the idea that has been generated through the brainstorming activity. Prototype is to design a prototype or a series of prototypes to test all or part of our solution. Test or testing is engaged in a continuous short cycle innovation process, which means that you go through the innovation process cycle very quickly to improve our design continuously. So if we apply the divergent and convergent thinking technique to the design thinking methodology, you'll find out that we apply convergent thinking through try to understand, use empathize to understand, observe the users, and to define a point, eventually use convergent thinking to come up with the right point of views. It certainly can be multiple point of view, but we do try to limit it such that we can address some of the pressing issues. And in the ideate stage, we use divergent thinking to seek possible solutions, and eventually we need to converge through trying out different prototype or approach, and eventually and through testing we'll find out which one or ones may be working and narrow down to a few possible feasible solutions. Okay. So IDEO, usually the design firm IDEO usually use this so-called go broad and then go narrow approach. And once you narrow it down, you need to go broad again and then narrow it down. And so you continue apply this until you come up with the right solutions. And this go broad to go narrow is really the heart of the creative problem solving process. And in creative problem solving, similar to design thinking, they break down the whole process into different stages. One is objective finding, and then facts finding, problem finding, ideal finding, solution finding, and acceptance finding. And each of the stage, you will use divergent thinking and then convergent thinking. And when you start the next stage, you use divergent thinking again. And typically, this is really part of the problem definition, okay? And ideal finding and solution finding can be grouped together. And acceptance finding is really part of the organizational implementation phase to figure out how your solution will be adopted and accepted properly in an organization. So let's look at some of the research methodology used in design thinking. This method tends to be qualitative in nature through observation. Shadowing. Shadowing is a specific kind of observation that you follow a user or customer or the individual that you study. You just follow them and record what you have observed. Or you can ask the user to self-document their daily activity. And after observation, you may conduct interview individually or as a group. Sometimes we use approach called a day of life in the life of a customer to observe what they do and why they're doing certain things. We do use marketing research, which tends to survey large amount of subjects to identify their needs or the market trend. This is actually called quantitative research, and you study a large amount of individual and try to identify some so-called truths. And qualitative research, here we call it insights research. We spend much more time with fewer individuals, but try to get deeper in our understanding of their thought and behavior to gain insight. And due to the limited sample size, a lot of time we cannot really prove our finding or insight. However, the insight can inspire us to pursue some of the innovation in certain direction. We need to use multiple methods and triangulate the findings of various methods to have a clear and complete picture of what's going on in the problem domain. And we can ask questions, ask people what they do, what they think, or we can just use observation to observe what people do. Or even we can try to immerse ourselves in that particular experience, to experience what your user is experiencing. One particular method is called ethnographic. Ethnographic is observing behavior in natural setting. It's used by anthropologists when they study some Aboriginal tribes and study particular their cultures. And it has been applied to marketing research since 1980s. And this type of research needs to be conducted in natural setting, in the home, in the store, etc. Here are some characteristics of ethnographic research. Once again, the research should take place in the field. Observation is the primary data collection technique. We use interviews, follow-up interview, to clarify our observations. and our attention is paid to the context and the artifacts that we have identified through observations. And any field notes, the notes we're taking in through our observation, need to be coded and analyzed to identify themes and some key variables. And ethnographics research can help us produce fresh insight for guiding us in terms of design strategy. Since observation is at the core of design thinking, so here are some tips in conducting observations. We try to identify the user's needs and not solutions. We will focus on the behaviors that reveal key design concepts. We try to capture cases at the opposite end of the scale, which means some extreme behavior of users. We try to look for unseen behavior, scaffoldings, the kind of underlying structures. And we pretend we're the traveler, the foreigner, so we have a fresh eye on what we observe and be curious about it. And need to have the empathies and pretend we are the people we observe, put ourselves in the shoes of who we observe, and that's the golden rules called empathy. A quick example, and you should go and watch this video here. It's ideal when Oral-B asked IDEO, the design firm, to design kids' toothbrush. And the first thing they did is to conduct some observation of how kids kind of brush their teeth. And the sponsor, the Oral-B's people, kind of did not agree with that and just say, well, we all seen kids brush their teeth, and what's the big deal? Why you want to spend the time and our money to do that? But they insist that maybe we'll find something new, something different. So this is, and before they conduct observation, most of people will pretty much think about kids' toothbrush by just creating a smaller toothbrush comparing to the adult toothbrush, just make it smaller. Which may be true, but in their field observation, they found this is kind of how kids hold on to the toothbrush, because their hands are tiny, so they actually had to grab the handle of the toothbrush instead of and if you make the handle too tiny, it's very difficult for them to actually hold on to the toothbrush. Therefore, that insight, that observation leads to this insight. The insight leads them to the design of the toothbrush that has much bigger handle. The toothbrush, the head here may be still smaller than the adult's one, but the handle is actually much bigger and easier to hold on to. So the simple observation leads to this a new design for kids' toothbrush. Now you go to the supermarket, you will find most of the kids' toothbrush has been designed this way. But Oral-B has a leading edge when they first came up through the IDEO's design, came up with this type of design. It certainly become an instant bestseller. We talk about immerse yourself just like the user. This is actually another IDEO's case. They they were asked to design some hospital's patients' ward, and one of their designer, I believe it's Paul here, just attach a video camera to his head from his eyesight direction. Nowadays, probably he will use a GoPro to do the same thing. And pretending he was a patient, and then go through the standard procedure to be checked in, to be put in the patient's rooms. And when he played the video, to some people's surprise, this is what he was seeing. It's basically just the ceiling of the patient's room. Most of the time, the patient are seeing just the room, the roof, actually. The ceiling, not the roof. The ceiling of the patient's room was bright light. And so in order to brighten the mood of the patient, they found that the wall and the ceiling of the patient's room is very important, because that's what the patient look at most of the time. So they suggest redecorate the roof and the wall with delightful pattern and color. Sometimes they suggest the use of so-called body stoning. This, I believe, is trying to design the seating for airline manufacturers. So the designers use some chairs and in a very cramped space, and then try to experience that how the traveler would be sitting on an airplane with very limited space. And then eventually they come up with better design. So after observation or during the observation, if we can interact with the customer user, we need to ask the right questions. And one technique is called question zero. You start asking why or what if to get to the heart of the matter. We ask deeper question to solve deeper problem. We ask sometimes same question differently, like why do you like such this product? How do you convince your friend to buy this? And we will use different interviewing technique, such as to show me or draw it for me, or ask the so-called 5 whys. Keep asking why, which we would illustrate later. And think aloud. Ask the users to think aloud so we can understand their thought process. Another is called reverse mentoring. Ask young people, because they are very creative, and they have a lot of ideas, because they may not have seen some of the existing solution yet, so they tends to be more open-minded. Let's explain 5 whys. This is just an example. For instance, first we said, why did the robot stop? The answer is the circuit has overloaded, causing a fuse to blow. Then we can follow up and say, why the circuit overloaded? And then the answer is that there was insufficient lubrication on the bearing, so they lock up. Then we have to ask, like, why was there insufficient lubrication on the bearing? Then the answer may be the oil pump on the robot is not circulating sufficient oil. And certainly we will ask the follow-up questions. Why does the pump not circulating sufficient oil? The answer may be the pump intake is clogged with menthol shavings. And then certainly we will say, why does the intake clogged with menthol shaving? And the answer may be because there's no filter on the pump. And so that may be the root of the problem. And therefore, by adding a filter to the pump may solve this problem that we identify in the first place. So that question 0 is a creative process of asking a sequence of why we illustrated previously, or what if, to get to the core of the problem, to find the root cause of the problem. And in an IDEO project team, they were working for publishing firms, discussed a possible way to sell textbook. Initially, their question was, how do we sell more textbook? That's pretty obvious and straightforward. But through several iterations, go deep down, and they found out that that question is very limited. It's kind of was blocking their ideas. Later, they kind of open up their perspective and start to ask a different question. In this case, is how do we better support students in their learning? To some extent, textbook is one way that try to support students to learn better. However, if you ask this question, then you look beyond the textbook as a possible solution. So simply asking this question help broaden their perspective, and they are able to address a bigger issue, explore new way to communicate with the student. Let's look at a case study. This is one of the General Electric GE's divisions, and it's the division which produced very expensive MRI machine, and one of the chief engineer once visited the hospital and found out that most of the kids actually has to be sedated in order to go through the MRI test, because the MRI machine is very noisy, and to the children it's kind of very scary things. And so he got really frustrated, and eventually he was sent to Stanford's design school for design thinking training. And so we define the problem in the following. The user is kids with cancer. Personally, I felt that it's just kids who need MRI, whether they have cancer or not. The need is the kids want to play and have fun, and so we want the kids feel like that going through the MRI is not a big deal. The insight is that kids participate in everything once they perceive it as adventure. So kids like challenge, and particularly if you turn that challenge into adventures. Okay, so the HMW, what might we question that we formulated based on this point of view, is how might we turn MRI scan for children's who into adventures. Okay, at the current state, kids are fearful of this MRI treatment and the medical treatment. So after came back from the design thinking training, they came up with a brand new solutions. The solution is really not redesign the MRI machine to reduce the noise. They certainly have tried that when they designed MRI in the first place. So let's look at some background information. This healthcare division of GE is $18 billion business. The MRI machine costs multi-million dollars. The problem is children are frightened by the MRI machine, and 80% has to be sedated before scanning. So the chief designer went through the human-centered design innovation training at Stanford Design School. The D.school here means their design school. And the solution is designing MRI machine. The solution is not really designing MRI machine or redesigning it. It's redesigning and humanizing the experience for kids. So that they're able to get young patients safely and willingly, to go through an MRI scan. If you wonder what's the solution, I hope this picture will show and tell the creative redesign. It's not the hardware of the machine. It's actually they paint the MRI machine and the room that house the machines to be like adventures. This is like a pirate ship. So they kind of would tell the kids, you're going to visit a pirate ship, and then you need to be quiet. It's very noisy. There will be gunfires and loud noise, and if you really want to enjoy this adventure, you need to stay still and keep quiet, and then you would be able to go on this journey. So this is basically the redesign, which certainly would cost a little bit of money of painting the MRI machine in the room, but it's not a lot of money by comparison to redesigning the MRI machine. This is just another space adventures theme, so they have different themes. And the chief designer went back and looked at this new setting and saw a girl just came out with her mom after the MRI scan and say, "Mommy, can I come back tomorrow to get another MRI scan?" And that comment is just very, very rewarding and proved that this approach really works. Last, let's introduce just a few more tools or methods that you can use to study the users when they are going through a service experience or using a product. And this is something called a customer journey map. And we were using a video rental example. We compared Blockbusters and Netflix for movie rental. And certainly Blockbuster is long gone. But as a comparison, this is traditional brick and mortar video rental store, and Netflix is through DVD rental through mail order and now through streaming. And we identified through the customer journey, we identify some so-called moments of truth, and which is a critical event or stage when the user are interacting with the service provider, learning about the movie, planning what they want to borrow and browse the movie title, choosing the right title, receiving the movie, viewing the movie, returning the movie, the DVD, and paying for it, and some exceptions such as forgot to return the movie and being charged with a late fee. And if you look at it in terms of Netflix has really good experience in many aspects in terms of learning, because online you can search and find out and plan your movie rental and even schedule it. And in Netflix offers more movie than Blockbuster, so there's more choices to be chosen from. And certainly in terms of Blockbuster, in the comparing to the sending out the DVD through mailing, Blockbuster has a better experience of, if you go to the store, you get a DVD right away. And however, with streaming, Netflix is moving in this direction through the video streaming. And the rest are similars and exception. Netflix, actually, there's no late fee, because you need to return your movie that you rent out before you can rent the other one. So you will never be charged with a late fee. And for Blockbuster, if you're late in returning the DVD, there will be a very expensive late fee. The story behind Netflix is the founder was charged a high late fee, like $48 for Apollo 13 movie that he rented from Blockbuster, and got really pissed off and decided that he wanted to create a kind of online rental business for movie. And that's how Netflix was invented. Dublin Inc., which is a design firm, proposed a framework. The framework is called AEIOU Observation Framework, which means when you observe in a field setting, the user, you want to document what activity they performs. If you look at the previous slide, this is kind of activity they performs, and the environment online in the physical store. What do they interact with, like a DVD movie or whatever. The interaction with, in this case, with the systems, with the individual, with the service provider. The object, in the previous example, the object could be the DVD itself, the physical DVD, and eventually the users. So you will ask, like, what are people doing? What kind of environment are they in? What kind of role they play in that environment? Any routine interactions, any special interaction between people and the objects, etc. If there's certain objects in the natural setting, are they being used or not used? And describe how people are engaging with objects. And who are the user? What's their role? And look for extreme users, because that extreme user's behavior may be something we need to pay particular attention to. Last, not the least, is the empathy map. We can observe the user and document in terms of what they may be seeing, what they may be thinking or feeling, and what they may be hearing or influenced by. And eventually, we want to observe what the users say or do, because what they say may not be what they be doing. We also want to document their pains or fear, frustration, obstacle they face when they're using the product or service, or consume the service, and or any games which represent their wants and needs, so we can measure their success. And this is called empathy map, which allowed us to look to study the user and document what the user is hearing, seeing, thinking, feeling, or is saying or doing. Okay, there's a lot of other tools that can be used, but the process that we introduce in this lectures, which is empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test, are pretty universal. There are different tools that you can use to support each stage of this design thinking process. And by the way, there's a feedback loop. After testing, you can go back to prototyping or go back to the IDEA stage, or even sometimes go back and study the users further. So once again, knowing and following a methodology increase your chance to be more successful when you engage in start a company or designing a new product or creating a new service. And a methodology has a set of kind of principle. In design thinking, they call it mindset. And those are guiding principle guide us in applying the methodology. And the process model layout here is part of the methodology. And in each stage of the overall process, in different stage of the process, we may use different technique or methods to document our finding to help us to move along this development process. And that together we call it methodology. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.